would, if I'd gone to like Cal and played rugby, it'd be like, okay, there's a pathway to the men's team. But at that time, I had no concept that there was a U.S. national team, right? And not that I'd be good enough to play for it, but like the thought crossed my mind, like, oh, professional rugby or international. It's just like never crossed my mind. I didn't even think about it. Yeah, I think it started to become just a process, right? And it's funny because, like, a few minutes ago, I was talking about how I was completely ignorant of what was going on in, like USA Rugby and the national team. And now we're talking about how, like, I enjoy research. It's just, I think what happened there was, to your point, just maybe born out of frustration of trying to make the process more efficient. And it's certainly challenging. Is it helpful that the World Cup is coming here and we're going to host it in a couple of years? That's great. Yeah. Is it helpful that Major League Rugby is still continuing to march on, even though we're having some setbacks here and there? Of course, college rugby is growing and like people are discovering it. But I don't know the answer to like how do you really get that spark to really.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You are now tuned in to the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time.
Welcome to the Rugby Swag Show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Rugby Swag. My name is GiftTime and Baylor, and of course, this is a show where we speak to people about the opportunities they have found, created, or taken advantage of via rugby, on top of the fact of introducing and letting you know about what is happening on your rugby daily lives going around the world and domestically. Y'all, I hope you guys are excited. We got an amazing guest, if you, of course, haven't read the title card already. But before we get started on that, I need you guys to please, if you can, like and subscribe to this. Of course, every little bit of the algorithm helps, but more importantly, we want to be able to get the information and we want to get the knowledge and really be able to create not just the understanding of the sport of rugby, but the humanity of rugby, so that we can be able to develop all our casuals even that much more. But y'all, you guys can also please continue to support us, if you may, by following us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Rugby Swag Show. Of course, you can follow me on X at GiftAbelu, GiftEgbelu. And then, of course, on every other platform, let it just be at GiftTime Rugby, GiftTime Rugby. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on TikTok, you can find us on Twitch, you can find us on even to some extent on Instagram as well too, and Reddit if you want. Y'all, I really do appreciate it. And then, of course, look, if you guys, I've already followed and you already know about the YouTube channel and you're just like, and my friends, they only listen to podcasts. Well, we also got you on streaming. Absolutely follow us on all streaming platforms. That's Spotify, that's Apple Podcasts, that is Amazon Music, that is iHeartMedia, that is Overwatch or Overtime or whatever it's called. Literally any major streaming platform, we are on that accessibly. So don't worry about it. Share this out with the friends because, like I said, we need to be able to continue building our casual viewership so that they can continue to appreciate the excitement that rugby has, especially when we have the biggest moments going on. Y'all, I am, like I said, incredibly excited to be able to talk about this guest and to be able to introduce you to this guest. This is John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning and the co-host of the podcast U.S. Rugby Happy Hour that he does with Eagles Overseas moniker, a.k.a. Bill Baker. Great podcast that they started on X as an Twitter Spaces and has migrated to becoming one of the better podcasts that are out there. Man, great conversation with John from his start to how he's become one of the leading rugby front page media heads in this game. And, a guy who has been probably one of the most supportive people in rugby. He follows it all. He provides a newsletter called Rugby Morning that you can subscribe to, and you will get your regular rugby news on what's going on internationally and domestically, man. It is legitimately dope. And it was a great conversation to be able to talk with him about it, like just to be able to get the story. And I look forward for you guys to see, because again, it's sometimes other ways of being able to play rugby that doesn't just involve being able to take the hits or do 15s, 10s, 7s in a way that's formal, but also to be able to provide another aspect of life and of influencing the way that the game is able to grow and just, even taking it on to the next generation. So I'm really excited to have you guys take a listen to this. But before we do that, let me just make sure we talk about the people who help us most. Absolutely need you guys to check out Health Enhanced Foods, the #1 specialty flours company, wanting to provide you the best baking mixes in the game for your personal health, for your personal well-being, and of course, for your special dietary needs. Gluten-free, egg-free, but most importantly, not taste-free. It makes it so that you can be able to do what you need, so you can be able to get the cardio and carbs that you want. But guys, in the meantime, get ready. John Fitzpatrick, Rugby Morning. Check it out. I'm going to let you get back to the show in a moment, but I want to talk to you about our sponsors, Health Enhanced Foods, the best specialty flours in the business. What does that mean for you? That is the flours that allow you to be able to get the nutritious need from your bread made. That's muffins, bread, croissants, whatever, pancakes and muffins. It will give you the opportunity to be able to get the best while still being able to eat like you wanted to. We have various amounts of products available for those who have special dietary needs, to those who are looking for a special health outcome. And of course, because they're part of the Rugby Swag Show, we want to let you know that you got a chance to go to healthenhancedfoods.com and use code Rugby Swag to be able to get 20% off your first order. Y'all, this is something that you're going to need. You got to build up, have your energy at the best, be the maximum. It's 2024. Let's do the best. But now, I want you guys to get into it. Let's get back to the show. What's up, everybody? We got another special guest for you today. Man, this man is the Adam Schefter, the Waz coming in of rugby. Man has been working from the NFL Players Association, working now with NIL, but most importantly, he runs the newsletter Rugby Morning and is one half of the great podcast duo of U.S. Rugby Happy Hour. We got the legend, the great John Fitzpatrick. Yo, John, man, I want to say thank you for coming onto the show today.
Gift, I've officially made it. I'm a guest on the Rugby Swag Show. I've made it. I'm at the pinnacle here, man.
Oh, look, you flatter too much. This is the least for allowing me to be able to spit my mess not once but twice on y'all's Twitter live / podcast on this. So I look at this as the honor overall, my brother.
No, man, we love having you on, and Bill and I, we've got a lot of plans for 2024, and you're going to get the invite again. So much to talk about. So much.
Bro, I love it, and I agree. I feel like 2024 is a different kind of year. And just there's just so much that's on the transition horizon, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more. But before we get started, I wanted to kind of always talk about the early times of getting to know you, and I've always appreciated the level of support and dedication that you've had to being able to support rugby media in all its forms. You're one of those few people who have found a way to, I don't know how you do it, but to consume and disseminate the information from all these various sources into one area. And legit, I think that's one of the most significant things to being able to develop and grow the industry of rugby. And I think it is an underestimated concept. And I hope that you know how significant that is for it. So I truly appreciate what you've been able to do, from the newsletter to what you've done as a host, doing things with Matt, with Rugby Wrap Up, with MLR Weekly, what you've been doing with MLR, and subsequently what you've been doing behind the scenes as well. So a lot of credence and a lot of kudos to you on those flowers, man.
No, I appreciate that. And look, I mean, I'm trying to do is just reshare or re-amplify, right? Folks already in the media space, in rugby media space, who are already putting out great content, right? And look, everyone's got real busy personal lives going on. Maybe, you're away from your phone or computer and you miss some news and you want to feel like you're staying up to date on things. All I try and do is just grab a couple of links and just quick little tidbit, link out to the people, because it's anything that I'm putting out that's my own opinion, I'll put it out there. But any news that I'm going to make sure that the links go back to the original people who put those out there, so they're getting the page views and the recognition for doing what they do, right? Again, I'm just trying to make it super easy for folks to feel like they can stay caught up on what's going on in rugby news, because happening. There are now so many different voices in this rugby media space, which is fantastic, right? Like, you have been crushing it. So you've been crushing it. Lance has been crushing it. Wendy, Bill Baker, Matt McCarthy, Ryan McGinty. Like, I need to go. It's funny. I was at a real quick sidebar. I was at an Old Glory DC game last year, and I had a Rugby Morning T-shirt on. I'm walking around, and I bumped into a guy I played touch with, and we were chatting a little bit. And I'm walking to go get a beer, and this guy yells, "Hey, Fitz, rugby!" I look around, and really super tall guy. He's like, "Man, I love what you do on Rugby Wrap Up." And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I know I recognize this guy from somewhere. Like, right. Who is he? And I felt bad because I'm this little nobody. It's freaking Ryan Ginty. And I'm like, dude, you're an OG in this. You are. So later that day, I went back and I was like, I need to go through and actually like sit down and make sure I recognize Brian Ray and Duck Hoyle, like everyone who's been doing stuff for so long, who are OGs in this. I'm like, I got to play to make sure if I run into them, I'm not like, who are you? Because
yo, you look real familiar, right?
I know, I felt so.
Bro, honestly, sometimes it does feel like almost like the football mask, the football helmet. Like, you know the names, but you don't always have the faces that associate to it. Even though we can be out there, but it's like so much of it is the work and not the personal until you find yourself in connection. And then once there, it hits from wherever. But it is a reveal. It is a reveal, and it is an interesting process. But as that opportunity comes, and of course the community being small, especially within the American rugby media space, like it does become more apparent. And then you do have those situations, because Lord knows I've been in that same situation as well, where it's like, yeah, you're real familiar. I'm not 100% sure, but like, I know this. I know I know you.
Another quick side story. A couple years ago, when USA Rugby announced that they had been awarded hosting duties for the Rugby World Cup in 31 and 33, they held that announcement at like an office space in Washington. I live in DC, and I remember that morning I got invited to the event. So dropped the kids off at school, and I'm like a mile and a half from where the conference is taking place, and I didn't want to walk. It was a little chilly, so I hopped on a little shared scooter, headed down to where the conference was. I had my little bike helmet. I took it off, got my little media credential. I walk up there, John Rugby Morning. I'm like, well, here I'm in this press conference. You've got these Washington Post and others, and I'm like, well, I should ask a question, right? So I'm at the question time. And they call on me, and I'm like, well, no one knows who I am. Hi, John from Rugby Morning, newsletter, broadcast, rugbymorning.com. And I asked like the stupidest question of all time. But like, it's so funny because like, for doing this for so long, as long as you have, right, you start to get invited to this stuff because you're covering the sport. And they want more people to cover it. And I just felt like I'm like an imposter almost. You know what I mean? Like, who am I, this guy?
Oh my God! Look, that is literally the look. I always tell people, like, one of the people that I give the most credit to for being able to do this and start this was Laura Gill, back whenever she was the media director for USA Rugby, way back in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, give or take. And the fact that she gave me any credentials, I think the first one was USA Canada in like South Carolina. All right. And I was like, I had no idea. Like, I just started GiftTime Rugby. I took a flyer on getting the credentials. I didn't even think it was going to go through. And going there, I literally had no idea what I was going to do. I'm just like sitting there. I think at the time, Curtis with this is American Rugby, or what was his publication? Yeah, this is American Rugby at that time, and obviously Rugby Mag, so Goff and Pat were there. But like, I literally was sitting there and I'm like, I've just been doing the South. The only reason I'm here is because it's in the South. But like, even each time, you know, that feeling of like fraudulent, like that initial feeling of fraudulence, and then the initial feeling of like, what exactly am I bringing value that has justified this pass to go through? And then just you guys are continuing to allow me to be here. Like, man, it's a blessing, but it's that process of trying to figure out how to not be how to justify these passes for you giving it to me. So I completely understood. I think it took me probably until maybe 3-4 years after the first one before I started to be like, okay, maybe I've earned something. And I still am been like iffy on whether or not if I have anything to offer on this. Actually, to be honest with you, I don't think I actually really kicked in until 2019. I don't think it kicked in until 2019. Yeah. It took a while because
7 or 8 years into it.
Yeah,
for you then at that
6.
point?
Yeah, because
6, yeah.
It just, you know, when it comes to, especially with the journalistic effort, like when it comes to like, can you write out the article? I'm like, man, we got guys who are busting out articles same day. I'm not a same day guy. It might take me a couple days. And then when it comes to the video side, even on that, there is an edit level. And even for there, you're just like, am I doing something that is interesting enough for it? I think maybe 2014 ATL, it provided a little bit of an element for that. But I think 2019, when I did the Rugby World Cup, and then it was like, oh, I can do players and then get the crowd work. Then it was like, okay, I can watch the games, but I'm not like in the middle of it trying to find a pathway and be like, yo, can I bust out the same article that I feel like everybody else is doing? Now there's a unique element trend, and now I'm bringing something to the table. But it was a lot of testing. It was a lot of testing on the way to get there. I'll give it on that one.
Kudos to you, man, for doing it. I mean, like you said, like you mentioned other names like Goff and Clifton and Jackie. So many folks who've been doing this for so long and doing it so well that, you know, it's cool just to be in the conversation and interact with them and engage with them through primarily social, because, you know, I've met a couple folks in person, but wow, man.
No, I feel that. So, you know, as we get started, though, I do want to say, because we'll talk a little bit more into that, but you've heard it before, and I'm going to say it again, man. Every superhero has their origin story, sir. And you are a superhero in this industry. So I want to know, how did you get started with rugby?
Yeah, it's, I mean, it feels like a kind of a similar story of others who found the sport later up just outside of DC in Maryland. You know, in a family that, you know, valued athletics and academics, and I have a twin brother and 2 older sisters, and it wasn't like sports were forced upon us. It was just something that we all enjoyed doing together.
Yeah.
Played high school basketball, big baseball fan, and took us a bunch of different sporting events. Man, look how messy my background looks. I apologize for the viewing audience.
I love it. Look, man, we are in rugby. Back here. We are people. This is the process that it takes. All right. This is how you know this come over and clear love.
Up, please. Should have a rugby ball around here or something. I thought I did anyway. So played 3 sports in high school, and again, helpful, you know, with the twin brother, that we were competitive in the neighborhood I grew up in. Everyone just played sports. So in high school, played football, wrestling, and lacrosse. I'm not a big guy. 5'8" and 3/4. I'm taking that 3/4. But, you know, still, although being under fairly decent athlete, you know, lettered in 3 sports, wrestling and lacrosse were probably the better sports. So like smaller, but like enjoyed the physical aspects of all of those sports. Stamina was kind of always the thing. When I was from high school, you know, I had a thought about maybe wanting to play Division III lacrosse, but I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a break from it. And where I decided to go to college, American University in DC, I just was on their club sports website and was just looking at the different club sports. And I saw that they had a club lacrosse team, but it didn't look like it was too active. And then I'm scrolling through it and I see men's rugby, oldest continually active sport on campus. And I click on it and I'm like, oh, cool. I'm seeing some videos. I'm seeing a lot of people. They're really active. They've got like a schedule. They're in a conference. It's a club sport, so it's more than just intramurals or rec. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And no, like I knew what it was, but I had never really seen a match before. This is 2000 and time frames around 2002, 2003. So I go, I search a couple of links. I'm seeing hits and runs. I'm seeing guys that are big and small. I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. I have no idea what kind of shape it is. So I go down this rabbit hole. I'm like, what kind of shape do you need to be? I literally Googled, like, what kind of shape do you need to be in for rugby? And one of the first links I landed on was, if you're a back, and I identified that I probably was a backward.
Right.
This link said, you need to run 2 miles in under 12 minutes. And I'm thinking, okay, I've done that. So I'm like, well, you know what? Let me try this. Now, you got to remember, this is mid-August in the DMV. You've been to the We've hung out at HBCU Rugby Classic. Yes. It doesn't get as hot and humid as like the deep south, but it still gets hot and humid in the DMV, in the DC. So 90-some degrees, the humidity's up there. I'm like, all right, 2 miles. Let's go run under 12 minutes. I do it, but it's so hot. It's so humid at the end. I'm like going to have a heat stroke. And I remember I did it along this bike path back behind these two neighborhoods. And I lie down. I'm like getting dizzy. I have no water on me. I'm just like lying down on the ground, like, oh my God, this could be the end here. And my dad's friend walks by. He's like, John? I'm like, Mr. Downs, do you have any water? He's like, yeah, I'm doing out here. I'm like, I was doing a running test or something, and I was not prepared, and I really need some water. I'm dying here. He's like, should I call 911? I'm like, no, please, just give me your water. And I didn't even feel bad. I just took the whole thing and just chugged it, sat up, and I was like, I guess this is what rugby's like. Again, no idea what rugby was about. This was just a silly running test. I don't even know if that's even the case. So I go onto campus. I go to the first practice. It was something about the sport where I felt at home, right? Like not big enough to really be very good at football, but elusive enough. And because of wrestling and because of lacrosse, knew angles and how to attack. And, tackling for me, the technique behind it, of all that, just felt at home, right? Just felt like I found a place on the field where I would be able to use my athletic ability. And scrum half, fly half, fullback, loved all that stuff. And it was just, it wasn't like love at first sight, but it was just like, man, this was the sport I wish when I was 4 or 5 years old, not when I'm 18 and 19 first finding the sport. But man, I had a great time. 4 years in college playing club, studied abroad for 1 semester, got to play in Australia, probably played on some of like the best rugby teams in my life, third side uni team, but we're playing colleges all up and down Australia. Played with folks from New Zealand, from the Pacific Islands, just having fun, and it's just a good old time, right? So, but it's funny because like hype never entered the picture, right? Like in my mind, if I'd gone to like Cal and played rugby, it'd be like, okay, there's a pathway to the men's team, but at that time I had no concept that there was a U.S. national team, right? And not that I'd be good enough to play for it, but like the thought crossed my mind, like, oh, professional rugby or international, just like never crossed my mind. I didn't even think to look at it. Yeah, just playing.
But that makes sense. It's like you're talking about 2002, 2003, 2004-ish era.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's at that point in time where rugby exists as the USA rugby team, but is it like promoted? Like I know for me, in that time, that's early days of me, late high school, early days of college. And even on the rugby team that was for us, who allegedly, like my high school was on the college campus at LSU. Allegedly that LSU team played on campus. I was there for 4 years. I swear I never saw these people ever exist ever at all. Like they said they played in the middle, never saw them. You know, so like I can imagine even with the USA rugby team, like you know about rugby, you find out about it, but it's almost like what I always considered in the same guys as almost like the Renaissance Festival. It exists because people like it, but do people really go anywhere with it? No. Like it's
such a funny
analogy. Whenever you play, you're just like, it's club. You're like, okay, it's another club sport. Yo, it's dope. We're having fun. Let's go do it. Why would anybody be doing this national? I've never heard anything from it.
Quick sidebar, going to a Renaissance Festival is a wild 3 hours of your life, man. Let me tell you.
Used to be my annual holiday trip. Like that Renaissance. Look, man, I can go in. I used to literally go to a Renaissance Festival, and I would either come out with a sword, a throwing star, or a knife every single time. Like it speaks to my heart in a different way. But you know, I want to ask, you know, obviously you talk about having your twin brother, and you also speak about the fact that basically outside of baseball, most of your sports are contact sports. Was it like being a twin, you know, and playing with your brother with lacrosse and wrestling, was it almost like you guys got to almost joust with each other and it kind of increased the appreciation for contact? And or like, is it one of those things where you guys there's a natural gravitation towards that contact kind of sport, and it just so happens that you guys go through that, go to them?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that, right? Just, you know, twin brothers, right? Siblings are naturally always gonna, you know, have a competitiveness with each other, and since we were both about the same build, like of course we were playing the same sports and being competitive and want to get good. And, you know, if you strive for things and you want to get better, it helps if you've got a partner who's right there doing the same thing.
Right.
So like growing up, you know, we would fight and stuff, and typical brother stuff. It wasn't like we hated each other, but it was helpful like
break noses.
I will say though, we had like an unwritten rule. We could punch each other, but we didn't really hit in the face, and we didn't hit below the belt. And there were a couple of times where, you know, things got a little.
You're playing too much. You're playing too much. Don't start me up right now.
We used to go in the backyard and we put our lacrosse helmets on us, and then we would box. That'd be the only time we could hit each other in the head, was when we had our helmets on. But
I love that.
Well, the one time I took it too far, and I apologized to Dean, and I still feel bad about this. We were like 12 or 13. We're out front and played hockey, and something happened, and I got mad. And one of the most cowardly things I did in my life, he kind of was skating away, and I took the hockey stick and I hit him right on the back of the leg. And in the moment that I did that, I was just like, I messed up. And say sorry right away. You know what I did? I ran to find my mom, and I hid behind my mom, because I knew that as soon as my brother got up, and it took him a while, he was going to come try and beat my ass. And my mom was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you shadowing me? I'm like, Mom, I just want to give you the Dean is going to come storming in here. He's going to be very mad. Huge welt on his calf. He was fine, but like, yeah.
You broke the rules.
I broke the rules, man, in a big bad way. But to go back, since we were smaller and played tackle football, my parents wouldn't let us. We played soccer a bunch. It wasn't until we got to junior, senior year that my parents finally were like, fine, whatever. You guys are already wrestling. You're already playing lacrosse. We'll let you go ahead and play football. So that was fun. And it's funny because in all the sports, particularly in football, cross, I was more on the offensive side of the ball. My brother Dean, whose nickname in high school was Captain Chaos, Captain Furious, because he was just like, he played defense, so he was more natural. He should have been a rugby player. I shouldn't have been playing rugby in college. I wish my brother would, man. So like when he was playing defense and I was playing offense, we naturally would go against each other in lacrosse, and obviously then football too. And then wrestling is just, you know, taking the other guy down. So that natural competitiveness drove us to get better, and it was fun, right? So brother, who knows how my athletic journey would have been different, right? It could have been similar path, but not having someone, you know, there to compete with every day, it could have been entirely different. And I wish my brother and I had gone to the same college.
No, I was gonna say, why didn't he end up playing? So you guys ended up going to separate colleges as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same high school, different. So we went grade school, high school together, and then different colleges. And where he went to college in like Northeast PA. So not a rugby club team up there or anything like that. Because I'd imagine if there was a team, he would have found his way onto it. Because he went to a couple of my games in college and was like, dude, this is awesome. I was like, yeah, why don't you start playing? But it just didn't happen that way. Because it's so funny.
Because I was about to say, I was like, I know it's very interesting. Look, and I'm also like taking notes because I'm seeing what my future is. I got these twins that are coming in a few months. So like, I'm thank you very much. You know, so I'm like waiting, understanding the connection pieces that go to it. But why did you guys end up going to separate universities? And obviously your pathway ended up taking you to rugby, and then obviously went up in PA. Obviously he did his thing. But why did you guys end up going separately? Because a lot of times it's usually not until the workforce that a lot of twins seem to then go find their own pathway.
Yeah, I think it wasn't like we needed to get away from each other. I think it was just the university we went to just drew us there for different reasons. And it wasn't like he was that far away either. It was like two and a half or something like that. But yeah, he was dead set on the one place, and I kind of liked the other one, and was just like, all right, you know, we'll see each other, you know, when we come back from breaks and things like that. And a lot of my buddies from college, you know, he's friends with, because, you know, Dean would just be around on brother. So yeah, it worked out that way. But again, man, I wish there was a club rugby program at the college he went to, because I mean, I was scared of him in high school.
Look, I feel like this is one of those that could have gone two ways. It was like if he had a club rugby
program,
like
a therapy session,
right? Hey, we go deep, man. We go deep. This is what it's about, baby. But yo, I just like it's one of those situations where, like, you know, if he had one and you guys happen to be rivaled out, there could have been a situation where he's playing forward, you're playing backs, he hits you hard, you're like, hey man, maybe this sport ain't for me, and you step out early, and then we don't get this whole pathway over here. Versus, you know, him not going, and you know, he get a spectator, you now see your pathway rise out from that moment. But I want to ask though, you know, going to American University, one, the fact that actually exists as a university, because it literally sounds like a movie university. It sounds like that one writer's lazy writing where they were like, they're from another country and they're like, what is a college that they have? They got French University. No. The University of Britain. No. America University. Yes.
You know, it's so true. It's funny because we had a lot of fun with that, because particularly when I did that one study abroad in Australia, you know, for studying abroad too, they would ask, like, where'd you go to college? And people would be like, oh, William and Mary, University of Maryland here, Illinois. Oh, where'd you go, John? I went to American University. Yeah, we know you went to a university in the U.S. Where'd you go? American University. Like, it would just go round and round. I'm like, school that I went to was called the American University. It's in Washington, D.C. I don't know what more you want me to tell you, but it was even more funny when we would talk with folks overseas too. They'd ask where you went to college. I'm like, the American University. They're like, wait, there's only one in the U.S. I'm like, yep, American University, not the Ohio State.
Right. We are the prominent ones. We are the prominent ones here. All right. Let you guys know. But what was that experience? Because from what I've seen, maybe in later years, maybe 2014, 2015, their program started to accelerate a little bit more. What was that program like for you back in what, 03, 04, 05?
Yeah. So when that would have been, 2003 was my 2003 is my freshman school in 2002. So 2003 I guess would have been. Anyway, when I was a freshman on campus, right? It was so long ago.
It's so weird looking back, yo.
It's so long ago. You can see the grays in my hair, and that was so long ago. Freshman, my freshman year, really competitive team, like seniors who had been playing rugby before they got to college. Like a number of kids who'd either played it at a prep school, like somewhere in Connecticut or upstate New York, and two with American University is that it had a really big international student body. So every now and then you would have international students who would come over for a semester who had rugby experience, and they'd be like, dude, there's a rugby team here on AU's campus. We're like, yeah, one of the best players we ever had was this guy, Christian Bengali, wherever he is right now, man, from South Africa. Dude was a stud. Like, just you could tell, just grew up with the sport, right? Like,
Right.
just so much better ball skills, just the way he attacked. And I remember the best compliment I ever got was Christian. We were just starting to play, and he was like, "John," I'm not even gonna try and mimic his South African accent. He was like, "John, I really like the way you try and tackle." I'm like, I'm gonna take that as a compliment.
No, it's not that you succeeded on it, but I love that you attempt.
But it was so my freshman year really competitive. A lot of upperclassmen who had played for a bit and like took the sport seriously. Like practice, 3 days a week, which is not a
That's a
lot,
lot.
but training through running and lifting and pretty competitive. It wasn't they weren't NCR yet. I guess that was right maybe before all that. So I
Right.
national small college or something like that.
Right. And
But
Scro at the time.
yeah, right. So we would play like Catholic University, George Washington, Georgetown, University of Maryland. We would go down to the Naval Academy and play like their fifth side. That was intimidating. Wow. Driving down to me at like 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning and seeing all these midshipmen just like running around and like beautiful campus. Like the field is right next to the water and you're like, wow. Right. And everyone's in shape. They're all big, playing the fourth and fifth side. So they weren't that team wasn't the most skilled rugby wise, but they were picking it up real quickly. They were just like boom, boom, boom. And, after the game was over, we would jump into the water, have a couple of beers and drive home. And it was great. I was like, all right, this is fantastic. You have to report to your headmaster or whatever, 400 military hours, and I can go back and, whatever. So, that was fun. But yeah, competitive for a club team for sure.
Yeah. No, and I think that makes sense. Like, again, it gives that variation. And of course, that area has that matriculation of talent and development there. And obviously, when it comes to the military side, even when you say the fifth side, again, the fact that there is enough numbers where you can have like a fifth, fourth, third side, let alone what they're going to do on the top two, like that speaks volumes. So regardless of whether he's like, oh man, what they were all right. No, that you had 5 levels to be able to work on these.
We played Mount St. Mary's, and at the time, Mount St. Mary's competitive. They had a competitive club team when we played them. It was always a battle right there on the border of Maryland and Pennsylvania. But what that program has become in years since, like, is impressive. Just goes to show, like, the hope and the pathway for some of these programs, both men and women, college programs, like to aspire to what Mount St. Mary's rugby has become when little old AU like play them and beat them on occasion, right? And now they have really grown and become a great program. So it's cool to see that growth that's happening in the college rugby landscape, even though it is navigating that is tricky.
Yeah, tricky, but I mean, it's one of those. It's a good problem to have. There's a lot of options. It's chaotic, but there's a lot of options. So, you did your college route, and of course, you had your stint whenever you were in Australia. How much did that impact your perspective of rugby? Because again, there is obviously a difference that goes from I'm playing at a university level in the U.S. where I am a fraction niche of a niche of a niche, where people, I'll even say at that time, didn't even know it existed. I think the only reason for me, I knew about rugby, and literally it probably happened, you said you got there 03, probably was 2002 whenever I kind of discovered rugby. 2001 was only because of the fact that I was researching football, because I was just moving to Louisiana and I was researching football, and it was like, oh, football derived from rugby. Oh, cool. Old sport. So this is the evolution of this. And then went on my little merry way after that, to not really care about it until 04 college. So like for you, how did that initial Australia trip impact you in your perception of rugby after that, moving forward?
Yeah, because the town that I studied in was Wollongong, had a big NRL, a National Rugby League. I think I've got that right. But there's the Wollongong, the Illawarra Dragons or something like that. So their stadium was right in the town. That game, and everyone would be like, "Oh, John, you play rugby?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do, but this is league, and I play union. It's similar, but a little bit different. There's a weird divide between the two, but does it really matter? Not really." Like, Anyway, it was interesting because when I played for the team, everyone and the university that I played on, University of Wollongong, I think had 3 or 4 sides and like 30 players per, and obviously the top side, some really good players. I mean, right, of Americans, right, and they would razz us a little bit and make fun of like how did you find rugby? But it was interesting just chatting with just your average everyday Australian, say about rugby, because they were like, oh, like in the U.S. and again, just playing club, I'd be like, well, I don't really know. I found the sport randomly and like I think it's a thing, right? So completely ignorant and uninformed of what's going on in rugby, which is, but naturally the conversation then would go to like, well, American football and the differences between American football and rugby players and all that stuff. But I think everyone kind of, even back then, they acknowledged, they were like, yeah, and like, dude, wait till rugby cast. Like, you guys are gonna blow us out of the water.
Right.
We're like, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, sounds good. We have a national rugby team. Like, again, so uninformed and ignorant of everything that was going on at the higher level of them. Like, those conversations were just kind of like, didn't know to look it up. Like, it sounds really bad. Like, it sounds pretty lazy.
No, but it speaks volumes. But no,
Yeah.
it does speak volumes. And again, it kind of speaks to, like I told you, like the same way I felt whenever I found out, albeit in 2009, almost 9 years after I lived in Louisiana, moved to Louisiana, like to know that there's a rugby team that's literally right next door, that's been around since the 60s. I never heard of them my entire time in my original stint in Louisiana, to then come back and be like, oh my gosh, like you exist. And then you're like, oh wait, rugby is not just, like I said, a Renaissance festival sport that people do, for fun, because everybody's got that like old game, like throwing darts or, I don't know, saying I play, what is that, snooker or something like that. Like, it feels so archaic. So you don't think anything more, but like, of course. And then the news isn't coming to you on any regular basis at all. So I think that speaks a lot also to where you ended up now with being able to do it, on being able to inform. So it makes a lot of sense to that. Making your way back from there, like when you graduated, did you start, playing club rugby in DC area, or was it just kind of like, oh, it's just college and then, I go on with life from there?
Yeah, I wanted to play club rugby and thinking back on it and trying to reflect on it, like I then moved to Charlottesville, Virginia, where the University of Virginia. I was working at a small TV station down there. So I was doing broadcast news, more behind the scenes production stuff. And my schedule was kind of funky because when I first was down there, I was working all of the night shows. So I would work like the 5 o'clock news block, the 7 o'clock, and then the 11 o'clock news. So my shift was like I'd start work at like 2 p.m. and I'd get off right after the 11 o'clock news. So like practice was just and there's no time, right? And I felt like I was back kind of in college again, because right when the clock news was over, I was making like next to nothing. We'd go right down to University of Virginia bars where beers were cheap, have a couple of drinks, go to sleep, sleep for 9-10 hours or whatever, wake up at like 1 o'clock, do a couple of things, and then go to work, like style, right? And then I got the brilliant idea of, instead of working the night shows, I'll work the morning shows. So they had Good Morning Charlottesville. So that one was, I would work mornings. My mornings would start at like 2 a.m. to prepare for the show, which started at 4 a.m. and would go to like 6 or 7 a.m. And then I would work the noon show. So at 12:30, 12:35, my workday was over. A couple hours, and then you fall asleep because you want to be in bed by like 3 or 4 in the afternoon because you're waking up at 2 in the morning. So like I couldn't even play rugby. Like I couldn't. Like, it's just the schedule was funky, and did that for a couple of years and kind of fell out, and found my way back to DC and was wanted to play club but didn't. Had a couple of things going on, and just decided that and this is the power of social media here, liking stuff on Instagram again, and a touch group that got together in DC that played down on the mall. I saw that. So I was like, I'll go check this out. Went down there, bunch of different people running around, bunch of different skill levels, did that. And it was just fun to kind of like get back involved in the sport and be playing again, Yeah. And then, okay, let's go check out to see what my old club team at AU is doing. And it was still going on. Nice. Like they always put on an alumni game. So we'd play an alumni game once a year, but never cracked on to play club, which is too bad because I would have loved to have done it. When life got in the way, married, kids, they start popping into the picture. And actually, my two oldest and my youngest will start. I've got 3 kids. They all do touch rugby, DC Youth Rugby, which you may be familiar with from talking with the folks up here. They've got a great touch program in the summertime that is free. So, I help coach the kids in that one. That's been fun to stay active and get involved in. But yeah, it's basically just touch rugby these days, man. My old bones and tendons and stuff.
Hey everybody, this is just the Bray Train sending out a personal little video diary to all you people out there, where I am going to document me riding most of the way between Singapore and Tokyo for the 2019 Rugby World Cup. Number 1 is because as part of my business I do Rugby Lovers Guide to Asia. Number 2 is I want to bring a lot of exposure to the rugby clubs and the rugby NGOs and charities. Also on a personal level, I just want to break the funk I've kind of felt I've been into for the last 10 years.
So for the next 12 months, I poured myself into this Singapore to Tokyo campaign, but it still wasn't enough. I needed help, and it came from Louisiana.
We in Singapore, baby!
Gift from GiftTime Rugby USA is a extroverted tour de force.
Say hi to my people out there.
Which makes up for my social shortcomings.
This place is unbelievable. No! It's not just it's like
what's he supposed to do?
Morons, a bunch of morons.
Guys, picture with me. Picture. Australian. G'day, mate. You can use my phone. But what unites us is a hunger for adventure.
Off to KL, Kuala Lumpur. Yeah! Woo!
Gift, where are we?
We're in
Mount Fuji, baby!
Our love of Asian rugby culture.
1, 2, 3, center!
Yeah!
Rugby is starting to develop here in Cambodia for women as well.
Valkyries, the mighty, mighty Valkyries!
And allows us to overcome incredible obstacles.
It's just got so thick. It's just so thick here. Now it's pouring down rain again.
But coming to this Thai-Cambodia border has renewed all the aggression.
So the whole thing's gone buggered. I got hit.
What?
I got tail-ended by a motorbike. I can just feel that knee, that ankle just going in all the wrong directions under the weight of my body. But that doesn't compare to the pain of failure.
I'm dying. Oh, I'm dying.
And that's what I've been worried about this whole time. We're out here, we're running out of energy, we're running out of money, and we're feeling isolated. And yet at that critical moment, friends, family, sometimes complete strangers come on board. Before you know it, we're back in the game. Tokyo, here we come!
Making a comeback. 4 weeks, 2,300 miles.
Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam.
After all the trials and tribulations, this ride had become deeply personal. All that mattered now was getting to that Rugby World Cup game in Tokyo.
Watch the full adventure at crugby.vhx.tv. That's C like SEE rugby.vhx.tv.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Be easy. My name is GiftTime and Bailu with Health Enhanced Foods. I I want to talk to you a little bit about one of my favorite products, buckwheat baking mix. Why is buckwheat baking mix important to you? The one thing that you want to be able to do whenever you're eating your food is to not have to worry about whether it's going to be healthy or whether it's going to be good for your body. When it comes with buckwheat, this is one of those few seeds that have a plethora of layers when it comes to what your health is. And within the buckwheat baking mix, it is great for those who want to be able to use it for pancakes, waffles, being able to make your bread, making homemade pasta. Like, absolutely spectacular for that. Now, it's not limited to those, but those are some of the best ways that we have found our customers being able to take care of it. On top of that, why is it so important? It gives you the protein energy that you absolutely need. And if you're an active person, I'm a very active person. I play rugby, I like to work out. This one feeds back the muscles, feeds back your body exactly what you need, and in a great way to be able to start off your day. It's rich in fiber. It is absolutely nutrient dense. And of course, it has the level of protein that you really are wanting to need whenever you want to make sure that your body is feeding well. This is absolutely the breakfast food for anybody who is really trying to make sure that their kids or themselves really kick off correctly. And it's absolutely easy to make. All you need to do is put a little bit of baking flour to give it rise, and it has everything else that you need for it. 20 minutes and you'll be done and filled up and ready to go on with the rest of your day. You guys can absolutely go buy this on healthenhancedfoods.com and be able to go ahead and check out that buckwheat baking mix. Enjoy your food, enjoy your breakfast. Let's go.
Hey, look, I can understand, and look, even being able to find that time, especially to just get the run in. Again, when their schedule gets so, massive, it's so impossible to be able, especially from an organized standpoint, to be able to involve in and be able to maintain that schedule, especially when you want to be like, if we're putting in the work together, I want to make sure that I'm able to be a value to the team and be able to produce for it. And so when it's like, I'm really only here just for the night. I can't do anything on game day. I barely can make it on the night. I don't want you guys to rely on it. I completely understand. Like I felt the same way, like, especially when I started doing this rugby media stuff, like around 2013, 2014, I was like, the time that I have to take, that I'm trying to take to try and build this is conflicting with the ability to be able to consistently offer my time to the team and provide at least a concentration. Because I'd find myself being in the middle of a game and being like, bruh, what's happening over here? Like, I need to see how to post, or I need to see what's going around in these areas. And it's just like, you're not being able to give the full, let alone, I'm coming to practice time, I'm here in the middle editing or trying to break down an article. It's coming close to 6. And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to get this out tonight. You made a mention about your career going in, and I think this is a really important component of your story. So obviously, like you said, you were doing TV and broadcast, and a lot will lead, because I want to get to how you got a part of the NFL Players Association, because this is very, very significant. But like, you started off as a broadcaster, so for you, despite all the sports, despite what you've been doing with family, was there always that natural inclination to distributing information? Like, was that something that you always had the interest on the side, obviously active, but, or was it something that you kind of fell upon whenever you got to AU?
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is there's some truth to that, in that always just been a consumer, perhaps, of news. Like, just grew up reading the Washington Post, returned to the sports section first. I mean, that was the heyday. Like, Washington D.C. sports were actually good then. Our football team actually won Super Bowls.
The days when we could make the playoffs as the Redskins, or when we had a basketball team that had Michael Jordan for a little bit.
Well, that era was not very good, but yeah, we did have Jordan. We did have Jordan and Kwame Brown. Shout out Kwame Brown, though. He actually had a decent career. That poor guy gets a lot of flack. But anyway, so grew up, on the Washington Post, and just kind of like reading, consuming news. And like, George Michael was like this broadcasting legend around here. He had the sports machine back, before ESPN and SportsCenter and the highlights, the George Michael Sports Machine was just, every kid wanted to watch it and be on it, right? So like I've always enjoyed that and just the storytelling of it, right? So I think that I gravitated towards journalism, broadcast journalism, the written word, whatever. That was just something I always enjoyed doing and being a part of. And then fast forward to how I guess kind of rugby mornings started. It was a thing where I was like going on Twitter and I wanted to start to follow different kind of news sources. And it was, you feel like you had to really do like your work to find the different pockets of information that you're interested in. And I was like, a lot of those, the Morning Brew and these other newsletters are starting up where they're just curating news and being able to filter it down and, owning the inbox, if you will. Right. So, I've subscribed to probably far too many newsletters now at this point. Right. Where it's like, I don't even open some of the emails, but at the time
you're like, there's no such thing as spam. It is only more information for me to be able to do.
Exactly. So I think it was, that this may not be answering your question necessarily, but it was like born out of the frustration of trying to find all these different places to go to. And I was like, well, if there was just like one place I can get an email where I can quickly just like scan through. And if I want to do a deeper dive, I can click on the link and go. And that's kind of where all of that started. And that all came out of COVID, honestly, because I was home. I had a little more time. If I didn't have the time to do it, I probably wouldn't have, but I'm home at night or during the day. And I was just like, well, let's just try. Let's see if I just, start following a bunch of people and taking their links and then sharing them out and putting it into a newsletter and making it super quick and off we go. And that's kind of where that all started. So thank you, COVID, I guess, for that.
Yeah. I feel like COVID, like that COVID time always was those revelation moments. But even in doing that, there comes that skill of being able to find stuff. Like regardless of what it is, like I know even for me, trying to still find relevant information and especially whenever I first started was always that difficulty. It's either let me look for the Facebook pages or let me do the Google Trends or Google keyword search and hope that it comes. And even that was its own chaos in and of itself. Now it became Twitter, X, but like to have a talent to find the information that you are looking for and filter it through all these courses is not something that you just do over COVID. Like that's something that you learned over time. So like that's why I go back. Like, was research a part of your ingrained behavior? Like, was that something that you had really been cultivating just because you were doing news early on, or was that something that was just again that's part of what you did?
Yeah, I think it started to become just a process, right? And it's funny because like, a few minutes ago, I was talking about how I was completely ignorant of what was going on and, like USA Rugby and the national team. And now we're talking about how like, I enjoy research. It's just, I think what happened there was, to your point, just maybe born out of frustration of trying to make the process more efficient. And it was definitely a process, right? It was like, because I feel like I try and grab a little bit of everything. There's certain stuff I'm probably missing or overlooking, or other folks in the media who are putting stuff out there that I haven't seen yet. And I definitely have a process, and it's taken the time where I'll filter for certain things or I'm looking for something. But a lot of it just starts from like stuff I'm interested in, and then I'll just kind of reshare it or try and put my own little take on it, and then see if the audience likes it or like clicks on it. Right. And a lot of it, I do get feedback when people email me and they're like, oh, can you do more on this? Can you do more on that? And I'm like, well, yeah, if I can find them, like, or if you've got links of people that you like send them to me so I can start dropping them in. But yeah, I think it was, and then as I started to get into it a bit more, and then it's like, okay, I want to expand a little bit more on some of the information that I'm sharing that again is already out there. Then you start to go a little bit deeper. And that's how I kind of got connected with Bill Baker a little bit, the Eagles Overseas, because it was like, there's this subset of some of the best rugby players in the U.S., men and women, who are playing overseas. And Bill's doing, the yeoman's job, just tracking them and trying to provide updates for fans back here in the U.S. Right, so like that was fun, and then you start getting into Super Rugby more, and then you got, of course, Six Nations and all this other international stuff. But definitely a process of just trying to filter what I think is just an interesting story, or maybe it's harder to find, or maybe someone shares a link that they send to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll share that in the newsletter. That looks like something fun to do, but it's definitely a process for sure.
Right. No, I can feel that. So like even now that you're looking at all this information, obviously we there's always learning that goes with it, but from your take, now having had the access to be able to talk with the players, or you have your access of being able to kind of see these various perspectives on the news, when you look at the landscape of where rugby is now, and obviously in comparison to other sports, like I said, you have knowledge and expertise that allows you to create some valid comparisons. What have you kind of seen has been the maybe not a silver bullet situation, but where you start to see this friction in development for rugby as you watch this thing progress? Because again, you're talking about like 2003. We know everybody's like, sleeping giant of the U.S. blah 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 blah, can be yada yada yada. To now, you're ingrained within the information industry of it, where now you're getting much closer perspectives and a fresher idea. How have you felt has been that friction in development from your side?
Yeah, and it's funny because I think it's the friction just around like the identity of what American rugby is, right? And putting our own spin on rugby, right? So, we've seen the experiment, right, of international coaches and players coming to the U.S., right, playing in MLR or trying to gain ability to play for the men's or women's Eagles, and bringing what they know back home from where, and trying to adapt it and tweak it here to the U.S. And certainly that's a good place to start from, right? We definitely need knowledgeable coaches and structures and systems, but if with 31, 33 down the horizon, we got to develop our own identity. And I think we're doing that, right? Because I think we realize that the story of American rugby, men's and women's and all of that stuff is being written, and we need to write it ourselves, right? Like we need to put our own American spin on it, right? Because we do sports entertainment so well here in the U.S.
Right.
I mean, everyone looks to us for how to do things, right? And yeah, someone could say, oh yeah, well, the Soccer World Cup's the biggest sporting event. I get it. But the Super Bowl, I mean, that is like the pinnacle of sports and entertainment. And it's got culture, it's got sports, it's got entertainers, actors, you name it, all of it. It's all entwined there. Now it's going to be in Vegas. It's wild. But, and I think that also then applies to how we cover the sport, right? And yes, overseas, they may do things a little bit differently. But here in the U.S., if you look across everyone that's covering the sport, and there's so many different voices, which I think is great. Because I think that's important. I think we need more and different voices in the sport, covering the sport. Because, again, maybe the information I put out isn't someone's taste, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe they prefer going on highlights and watching what Lance does because he crushes it when it comes to just highlighting the players. Or maybe they want to hear a deeper dive on women's rugby, so they go and follow Wendy Young. That's fantastic. That's what it should be. You should find the personalities or the people that you like, or the information that's spit out in a way that you like to consume it, and that's fantastic. So maybe some friction based upon look at how the Americans are doing MLR, or look how they're playing rugby, or look how they're covering the sport. Yeah, but we're telling the story in the way that we think our audiences want to consume it. Right. And it's funny because then you start to see other folks start to see what, rugby media folks here in the U.S. are doing, and they start to copy it a little bit. Because it's got to be entertaining, it's got to be informative, and it's got to be fun. Otherwise, what are we doing this for?
Right. And to that point that you speak, and obviously I've been very, very vocal about how much in agreement of that idea I am. You look at things like even the Premier Football League, and with their formulation, literally was a factor of what they saw from American football and wanted to create that same idea from club, and subsequently Premier Rugby League is just a copycat of what they saw Premier Football to be able to be doing itself. So it's like, yeah, those influences do play out here. So, you know, like I always have my opinion, but like I said, I like to see other perspectives. You know, what do you think has been preventing U.S. rugby identity from being able to formulate or have trust in its own self, based off of, again, the people you've talked to through U.S. Rugby Happy Hour, from the articles you've now gotten to read, and even paying closer attention to how MLR does their things? What do you think has been preventing it from being able to reveal itself as an individual?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and you almost need 4-hour conversation for that one. It needs to be like a
Hey, we'll
rolling
break it up into
series.
parts. We'll come back. We got to give them the taste, all right?
Well, I think, you know, it's funny. It's a couple of things, and you know, nothing that I'm going to say is anything new or groundbreaking. It's maybe even just echoing what people are already saying. I think some of it starts with the sport itself, right? The battle between the tradition of what rugby union is and like the more modern, like, let's get with the times here. Let's promote the players. Let's tell their stories. Let's let them be personalities, because that's what other sports leagues, particularly in the US, have done so well. Is that they, you know, you've got to have a rooting interest, someone that you cheer for, right? Growing up in the DC area, when the Skins were in their heyday, Daryl Green and Art Monk were my two favorite players, right? Like, and I followed them. I had their football cards. I had the, you know, the little miniature figurines and all that stuff. I had to have it. Played in Madden, right? It's funny, Lance mentioned Barry Sanders. He was one of my favorite players too growing up. Just watching him, just like unreal, right?
Yeah.
Those highlights need to be shown far and wide, and they did. And the NFL, to their credit, NFL Films bore out of this idea, like, let's, you know, make legends out of these players, slow motion, you know, big hard hits, and showcase the players. Fantastic. The NBA with social media, like, they widely shared clips and highlights of the games and the plays. What the hell is World Rugby doing with not taking down posts of guys like Squidge Rugby and others who are trying to share a clip or two across social? Every time I scroll and I see, this is copyright, do not share. Look, step back. I get it. There are business interests, contracts, and negotiations that are signed to play, you know, to pay for those exclusive rights. But there's got to be carve out here. Like, we've got to make exceptions on some of these things. We've got to let people be able to consume and see these highlights and see who these players are. Because what's so great about the sport of rugby compared to football is that there's no helmets. We can see the players' faces. We can see who's playing this beautiful game that we all love, right? So that's one thing, right? And so we need to break free of that a little bit. We need to let personality shine through a little bit more, because we have some very interesting personalities here in the U.S. and across the world. Hearing about their backgrounds and, you know, their personal struggles, the things they've overcome, or just the fact that they're just funny people. Like, let's showcase these personalities. You know, Alona Mara is a great example of what she's been able to do on TikTok, right? The platform that she had and the videos she shared when she was at the Olympics. That's fantastic for her. That's fantastic for the sport, just to get people who have never been seen rugby. Again, everything I'm saying is nothing new. Like, this is not new. At the same time, though, the burden shouldn't be necessarily on players like Perry Baker and Alona Mar and Naya Tapper to have to be like the flag bearers for always bringing attention to the sport, right? Because that's a heavy burden, right? Because not only do they have to be very good at their sport, rugby, now they also have to be very good at being content creators to get people to recognize the sport. And I think that's why it's so great with what we're seeing here, how it seems like the barrier to entry to go out and just create content, anyone can do it, right? So let's like tell the stories, showcase these athletes in a little bit of different way, promote them, try and, you know, raise their profile. I think that maybe that's a little bit incumbent on all of us, but you know, it's certainly, it's like a chicken and egg, right? Everyone's like, well, rugby's such a foreign sport. Well, soccer, you know, wasn't created here in
I honestly hate that excuse. I'm like, it doesn't matter, like, the origin of where the sport is, as long as you have an audience of some sort that exists.
Yeah. And this goes back to goes back to the conversation. It's funny, we were talking about the divergent pathway of me playing rugby, going to a college that had a rugby team, and my brother, who probably would have been great for rugby, going to a school that didn't have rugby, right? So, how do you reach? And there's probably so many stories, untold stories of athletes, men and women who are coming out of high school who love contact sports, maybe never seen rugby before, maybe played soccer or something else, and want to try something different in college, but just don't know what it is and had never seen it. And, how do you reach them to get rugby in front of them so you can get more just participants? Let's just get more participants in the sport. Then we can start sweeping the best athletes and filtering them to high performance opportunities, but just getting more participants, right? So youth, the kudos to everyone across the U.S. who are getting involved at the grassroots level, who are volunteering their time, spending a lot of time to coach and introduce the sport to young kids. That's hard to do. I mean, that is really hard to do. And then even at the high school level, it's great now with social that you can stumble upon something, or someone can share a clip, or you can see something, but it's hard. I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort, and oftentimes underappreciated, right? Or the fruit of your labors takes so long that because of other circumstances in life, you have to take a step away, and then who comes in behind you? Again, could be a coach or playing, or someone who's just creating content around media. If you have to take a step away, it's not necessarily someone stepping in next to fill in the shoes, to keep that torch going, right? So it's certainly challenging. Is it helpful that the World Cup is coming here and we're going to host it in a couple of years? That's great. Yeah. Is it helpful that Major League Rugby is still continuing to march on, even though we're having some setbacks here and there? Of course, college rugby is growing and people are discovering it. But I don't know the answer to how do you really get that spark to really ignite yet, man.
Yeah. That's one part where I think has always been so kind of even speaking a little bit to again the beginning of utilizing the players. I've always felt like one of the biggest losses that was not taking advantage of a player like Perry Baker whenever he was at his height, aka 2017, 2018, when player of the year. But I think a lot of it also plays into this factor of rugby follows. It doesn't set the trend. It follows the trend. And it's interesting using football as a comparison. We know whenever it comes to the NFL, when the NFL does something, it's usually amongst the last to do it, but it's not amongst the last because it's waiting to until it gets popular. It's almost like the research. They always say baseball does it first, basketball does it widest, but the NFL does it the best. And I feel like whenever it comes with rugby, we've always needed to be in a position where we can be progressive, because even though it's 100-year sport, it is a young media sport. Professionalism in 1996 versus everyone else was 1950, 1970, 1800s for baseball. You brought in a relevant range to it, or its ability to get its its World Cup. 87 is when it started versus 60 some 50 40 30 something for soccer. So you're always in a position of following. So I remember 2016 and I was like, one of the things that rugby has the ability to do is win the digital game. You should be, and this is when we were all starting to stream, myself and Ginty, early streaming of college and high school games on a college and high school games on a localized level, in 2013, 2014, and trying to build out from there. When everybody was still we need to be on ESPN, we need to be on satellite, yada, yada, yada. And it's okay, this is the moment where you start to have the rise, which I'm glad we had a class of us that were able to come in. And then, of course, even from the blogging side, it was relevant because now you had these distribution sources, social media, easier access to making websites, etc., like that, able to build in. So it's like, okay, we can come in on that. But when it comes to as a greater rugby community, like a greater rugby entity, I don't feel like that started happening until 2020 and really 2021. So now you have, Ileana Mar and Cody Murphy, who are doing the Olympics in 2021, but they didn't jump onto this until these guys were almost at 1 million followers on TikTok. Of course, Ileana ended up taking it over, but that's 2022 that we started to see it. And then now, we're starting to see, the Rugby Pass and their stuff. And of course, you had the chance of the Rugby Channel, which I thought was greatly innovative. I was like, you're doing the right thing. You are localizing in your rugby media and controlling where your output comes. Even when they were doing the shows, even though it was taken off the reference from UFC's element, UFC's the last fighter that they were doing on Spike TV initially, which really brought UFC up. It was doing a copy of that. It was like, good, you're doing things that over the long haul should be able to help. Of course, that got botched up because people started playing around with the money and lost perspective on the vision of it, and hence it collapsed until you get the Rugby Network in 2019, 2020. But by that point, we're now lost the momentum that comes with it. So to my point, it always is like, now we get to a point where like you've had documentaries, but now we got Six Nations, and we're actually now focusing on a player, and it's on Netflix, and we want to make it a big deal. But we only did that because F1, tennis, golf, all did it beforehand. And now the format is, familiar and now not recognizing. And so you lose, again, the progressiveness.
Yeah.
So it's like, I see when you talk about messaging, I go, okay, we have another chance again. Change the game from what's going. Everybody is zagging over here into the documentary range. Zig back into the written structure. Zig back into your content that brings formal masses. I talked with a guy from Argentina. His name is Eusebio Guinesu, and he talked about the regionality of high performance centers for Argentina, how they break it up into parts so that it's easier for people now to focus on finding players from these individual spots, right? That is a message of messaging where now it's, well, if we have somebody at the top creating content, whether it's us as content creators or whether it's organizational, like an MLR, USA Rugby, or World Rugby, now you have a place where people can center themselves. They find it. You find rugby. Now we can find a larger structure that can connect us into the individual clubs that go to now help the individual person to connect with the team, find your pro team connection, find your local club or youth club that can access it. And now you have a little bit more centralization because they see it, they want to connect with it, and now they have that access point. But I feel like we're in that position now where we're not doing it. We're not pushing for that type of content that people are used to. Remember our football movies, whether it was like Remember the Titans or Little Giants when we were kids, or those ones that inconsequential, or even like hockey, Mighty Ducks. How much did we want to play hockey after you saw Mighty Ducks 1 and 2, and you're just like, yo, I want to go do some flying V? Like
Triple Deke, Coach Bombay, let's go.
Exactly. Yo, can I be the Bang Brothers? Yo, let me go do it came in and then it kind of inoculates you into the sport early on. So it's like, okay, we have an opportunity where we can come back and do that.
Yeah.
But no, it's going back into what are we seeing that has been done recently and in the past versus push it in forward.
Well, you bring up a lot of good points there, and what I'm hearing a couple things are though is there is progress, right? Like, look just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like there's been a lot of gains, right? I think it seems like participation numbers are going up across the board, which is great. More college programs are springing up. More people are covering it. There's a professional league, if we're talking just US, right? On the men's side, there is, the semi-professional here with the women, but they can go overseas and play, right? So we're not there yet. We're making progress. Yeah, it definitely takes a long-term vision and like fortitude to see it through. And that can be difficult, right? Because that's time and effort. And sometimes you're not going to see results immediately. So you get naturally frustrated, things stall out, and you're like, well, we've run out of money or no one cares, and you stop, right? And you're so close to so close.
Getting it over the top, right?
Getting it over the top, right? You know what I mean? It's like, so I get that. And that struggle is all very real. But you're right, though. Like, I think there's, it takes the right people, whomever they are, or just anyone, to go out there and try and chart a new course for rugby in the U.S. Either the way the game's played, either the way the game is covered, or something different that, to your point, yes, is not just a let's copy what they're doing and see if it works over here. It's because it might not work. It's just, we need like that transformative. I keep saying we, and I'm hoping that someone will just do it. But it is going to take someone maybe watching this program. We've inspired someone who's watching this to be like, actually, here's the answer. I'm going to try this. And then they go do it. You know what I mean? They don't ask for permission. They just go out and freaking do it.
No, I think that is, and honestly, I think that's where the one great part that's come, like you said, that's built out from this. There are so many of us that have just decided to do it. And it's a big deal because you need to have that, especially in this industry, to have that ability that regardless of what the consequences are, low viewership, or may not get the support that you seek, but you genuinely love this so much that you want to put something that can allow people to find it, and having that and also helping to cultivate that becomes so important over the long haul. So important. So I agree with you within that element for sure about the fact that those voices continue to develop. And I love the fact that we get the risk, especially on the women's side. I think we're seeing a lot of that element happen, whether it's with Sam Loves Rugby, Samantha Lovett, and her skit rise through TikTok and Instagram, and being able to find this niche that allows her to open up, or again, Ilyono or Naya, or what we've been able to see from even them, the women's side, being able to bring an identity to women's rugby.
Yeah.
Versus trying to find it. And again, I think that goes a lot because it comes out of an abusive relationship, in the sense of like women's rugby has been so ignored that you either had to figure it out for yourself or you're going to be lost in obscurity. So to some extent, I do hope that we have that moment even on the men. So there is a collaborative effort, but it also makes me happy that we do have all these voices that exist and that there's collaboration. I think talking to Lance from that episode, the importance of collaboration. So like what we do here or what we've done on other programs, how we've been able to bring and we highlight each other so that there's almost this, I always like to compare it to Def Comedy Jam's rise to fame, where you had this whole class of comedians that literally had been working individually for 10 years. And then they got this moment on Def Comedy Jam and they presented it out to the public. And then you watch over the course of the next 10, 15, 20 years, where we got guys like Cedric the Entertainers, Bernie Max, DL Hughley, Stephen Harvey, Chris Tucker, all these people that we see in our movies now being successful because they all were able to collaborate in this realm. So I guess when I look to 2031, 33, I just hope that we get those early and that the bigger picture gets kicked in. So 31 and 33 get impacted like a rightfully done U.S. entertainment feature, right?
Yeah, and there's more people doing it, right? I'm sorry, I'm just going to plug in here because my phone's go on the kaput here. But yeah, and there's more voices, right? And there's because I think, look, I get it sometimes, right? Like I can get the perspective of someone who's maybe doing it for a while and all of a sudden you got these like upstarts coming in, and you feel like
you're
need
like,
to
you're
guard
taking
your
away, you
turf.
clutch my pearls. Yeah.
Yeah, like where were you 20 years ago when I was doing this by myself, alone, in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean, right? And now you got you got new people coming in, but I guess my argument back to that would be like, well, thank you so much, because what you're doing is causing other people to see that there are opportunities here. More people are discovering your work or seeing what you're doing, and the audience is getting bigger, right? If there's more people covering it, it seems like the work that others have put in. Yeah, I very much encourage everyone, like, just get started. Like, don't ask for permission. Just go do it, cover it in your own way, see what people are doing, see what your voice is, develop your own voice, whether it's on camera or writing, what have you. Just go out there and put it out there and let people engage with it and share their opinions. And yeah, you're gonna have some people out there who, we're gonna hate on it, but that's just the way things go.
That's part of the process.
Yeah, it's
I always say, if you have haters, you've been doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't appeal to everyone, right? Because there are some people who just aren't gonna like it, and that's fine. That comes with the territory. But I'm encouraged by, everyone that I've spoken with and chatted with, folks who've been doing it for so long, like yourself. I don't mean to like this guy over here, 20 years, like, but you've been the standard bearer on this type of stuff, for a while, and I think people need to just pay respect for the fact that hey, you've been doing this, man, like, grinding away at it, which is amazing.
I always say, like, it is that labor love, but it becomes like impetus and mission. And of course, just like, we were talking about what happened whenever you get your press passes, it is a process of like, where do I fit in this? Like, how do I bring me, or I think even better yet, how do I be the thing that I wish I had when I wanted it to, and that fills in the niche, because most likely there's other people that fill in that same gap and want to be able to transform it. So, the rewards come as they do. And I know there's always been motivations that come here and there where it really justifies what that reward is in the format. But again, it always comes back to, this is a mission, not a hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's a clear mission and purpose behind it that sustains you even when you feel like no one cares.
Right.
But you care. Right.
Exactly.
You got your North Star. Yeah.
Exactly. So kind of wrapping up, I want to know, for you, obviously, like I said, you as you become more integral into the rugby media industry, and you continue even to now see with your kids being able to play into it, what is it that you are looking to be able to fulfill as you continue this mission in rugby? What is it that you see envisioned for both Rugby Morning, US Rugby Hour, and even for yourself, John, to do it?
Wow, this really is a therapy session here.
Feeding in Oprah.
Are you charging me by the hour for this? Like, I mean, we're only an hour and 15 into this, man. We still another 2 hours. You and Lance are talking for another 2 hours after this, man. A marathon over there.
Look, we're getting the 5 minute 2 mile, the 12-minute 2 miler out of it, right?
I need some water real quick. I'm overheating. I'm at heat stroke. Yeah, I guess to answer that question, in a couple ways. As for my the kids who are starting to play, like that, they're 7, 5, 4. They're all 21 months apart. They're starting to be introduced to the sport. So they're playing. We're watching games on TV. They know some of the players. That part is really cool, right? So they're engaging in the sport, and they're gauging a little bit on. They're consuming some of the media around it, like stuff that I show them, and they know I do this Rugby Morning thing, and they're always like, "Oh, Daddy's on camera now." So that stuff is fun, right? So they're becoming more familiar with the sport. They're becoming familiar with the personalities. Like they have favorite players. My youngest loves Faf de Klerk. And I think it's just because of his long hair, the way it just like flows around. He loves Faf de Klerk. It's the funniest thing. It's a position he'll probably ultimately end up playing scrum half because stock isn't very big. Remember, 5'8", 3/4, but It's funny, right? So they gravitate to certain teams or players that they like. My oldest loves the All Blacks. He loves the All Black uniforms. He loves the haka, things like that. They just gravitate to certain things, right? So I'm going to continue to, indoctrinate them. It's maybe one way to put it. But if they don't like it, then fine, we stop. But if they continue to go down the path where they're enjoying it, then yeah, of course. So for them just to continue to engage and play with their friends and play the sport. US Rugby Happy Hour Live and Rugby Morning. It's like continue to cover the voices that everyone else is doing, but maybe in a little bit different way. And I shouldn't say different. It's just, okay, for Bill and I, the platforms that we use, our time at night seems to be a little bit more available. So let's do like an informal, just like 30 minutes, hit up a couple of quick things and let's just chat with a bunch of different people. And I think that's what everyone's trying to do, but I think that's great. And I think what is really neat is how accommodating a lot of these players and coaches and staff are for these opportunities. Like they love hopping on and talking about it. And then when the camera's over, they're always so appreciative. They're always like, thank you, appreciate what you guys are doing. And I'm like, we're doing a small thing here. We're just having a conversation. We're just broadcasting it. But for them to tell their story or just have people talk to them about rugby, I'm sure you get it too. They just love being able to share what they do.
Right.
I'll say on the Rugby Morning side, and maybe this is just, rugby media, there are more people covering the college rugby landscape because I feel like that is growing and that is so untapped, right? Like you think about what college football is and the industry behind it and just how passionate fans are about college football. Like it's aspirational for college rugby.
Right.
And even in high school rugby, right? Where games are being streamed now and we're following who some of these recruits are because these high school athletes see that, hey, I can play in college and at a high performance too at some of these universities. I can get a scholarship to play college rugby. And, my games can be, I can show my friends and family that they can see the games, right? The Rugby Network or, live and in person with some of these big events. And there's a pathway to potentially play higher, right? So I wish I had more time, and maybe that's the one of the biggest voids there too. Is just maybe, and this hard, right? Because our country is so big, and there's so many different, which is great, right? It's a good problem to have. There are more programs coming online, but covering high school and college rugby and telling the story of those players, and there are people that are definitely doing it and doing it well, but just like more of it, just more coverage, whatever it is. If it's just going live on Instagram or talking with a couple players or sharing something, just more of it. Because again, we need to be able to show just for everyone who's completely new to the sport, that there's this pathway through high school and college, and you can play on really good teams, or even if you just want to play recreationally, like there's teams in high school and college. How can we continue to tell those stories and showcase the sport to let people know that this sport is available? That's what I'd love to see more.
Right.
And I think people are trying to do it. It is a challenge, right? Because it can be a grind to try and do it and consistently do it. Because that's the biggest thing. You start up and then something drops off because things get in the way, right? So it definitely takes to your point, you got to have that mission, that dedicated drive and vision to see it through, even if, you feel like no one cares. People do care. Whoever you are, we're watching, we're listening, we care, we comment, we like, please keep it up.
Man, no, I love that and agree with you fully. And like in that same aspect, I hope to consistently see that growth happen because, again, it's the development of an industry. I think we got the game. I think we got the audience. I've always been one that says, look, if you can have 1,000 people that are playing something and have an interest, you have something to be able to build off of. The only time there's a problem is if there's 0 people, and at that point you have to work to be able to build it from there. And even that's not necessarily a negative from there. So, I love where you're going with that. And yeah, bro, I appreciate you, man. Continue to take the time once again. As I've said before, man, the fact that you curate and the fact even now learning more, even your motivations that go behind it, that you are creating that space for people, what to be able to find information with ease, be able to have conversations that they might not naturally have, and to be able to continue to have that build up. Man, it is legitimately a positively impactful part of not just, American rugby history, but rugby history as well too. So your part that you've played does volumes, and I continue to look forward to seeing what you guys do, continue to see your growth. And man, I look forward to seeing whenever your kids now start playing tackle and see that 5'8 3/4 really do its damage out there.
It can just be a little bit like 5'10,
Yo, get that 5 to A, man. Let's go. Let's go.
No, Gift. No, thank you, man, because I'm on the Rugby Swag Show, man. I made it. I made it.
Oh, and like I said, too kind, man. I absolutely. So thank you so much for that as well too, man.
Keep it up, Gift, man. Each time you pop on YouTube, I've subscribed. If you don't subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe so you can get the latest videos from Gift. Watch every single one of them. It's good stuff, man.
Oh, and lastly, how can people both find you and also subscribe to your newsletter?
Yeah, rugbymorning.com, or the Rugby Morning across all the socials, X, formerly Twitter, whatever, Instagram, all that stuff. I'm not on TikTok, but I don't know if I'll get there. But yeah, Twitter or rugbymorning.com. That's where you can find me.
You're where it matters. You're where it matters most. It's okay. It's okay. All right, John. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks, Gift. Appreciate it.
Yo, John, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Thank you so much for telling your story and to be able to break down and provide just an important aspect of what it means to be part of the rugby community, as well as being a rugby media person. And everybody else, thank you so much for the time, for listening to this, for taking the time to be able to add to the knowledge if you didn't know, and continue to support the knowledge if you did. I hope that you guys check out some of our other podcasts. Of course, weekly we have the regular news show every Wednesday at 5:30, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, we have so many other interviews. Last week, we spoke with Corey Jones, the freelance professional rugby player. Prior to that, we had DeMonte Noble, who's now playing with Western Force out in Sydney, playing with out in Sydney, Australia. We had the great Wendy Young. We've had Eddie Evans of Bangkok 10's international tournament. We have had Naya Tapper, captain for USA Rugby Women. We have had Cheta Emba, USA Rugby Women's fullback. We have had Jen Salomon. We have had Blaine Scully. We have had Maria Thomas, president for Trinidad and Tobago Rugby Union, and so many more people. Lance Kavanaugh of the Great American Rugby, like so many people, so many stories, and definitely so many lessons to be able to learn and to be able to add into the repertoire of what we have as a rugby community and as a developing rugby fan. This is what we want. We want to know who we're dealing with. So I hope you guys take care of yourselves, and I hope that I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're healthy. And most importantly, I hope that you know that you are highly favored. Until next time, y'all. Cheers.